SHOKY. SHOKY.
What was that?
SHOKY.
Busted Haro, was that you?
You must review me. You have forgotten what you are supposed to do. Have you lost your way?
I guess I've been busy. I didn't really forget.
But they want to see me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We can... I guess I can do that. But I had to fix you first. Okay, I know I haven't reviewed things in a minute, but, you know,
You must review me now.
Okay, here, hold on. I'll turn the lights on. Will that make things better? I know they really want to see things. Okay. Fine. Check out... Let's go ahead and review then. Alright, guys, so I said I would go ahead and review this, and obviously he decided to bug me about it. So here is my, well, busted and rusted Haro. And I threw this together the other day. I'd had this idea in my head for a little while, and even when Thomas Rice was over here the other day, I was talking about how to make it happen. And so with that idea in my head, I decided, I'm going to do it. So I did it. And except for the base, which we've seen before in pictures and everything else like that on my Facebook, and even on my community tab, we saw how I did the chipping and weathering and stuff like that. So I applied the same techniques, although more advanced now, because I've had some practice, to this little guy. And yeah, he's pretty awesome. So I can do a quick little walk around here. That's funny, if you turn around this way, it just looks like a globe. It's like, yeah, it's just landmass. It looks like Africa. Kind of, or the United States, and one really big Canada. And you can see he wobbles a little bit, and he's not on the little stand. He is just sitting on the base, and that is because he does have LED inside his head. But real quick, you can see inside the battle damage here. Looks really good. It's all dirty and rusty. I did add extra wires there, and the entire eyeball assembly right there. His flaps still work, even though it's damaged. You can see the hand inside is all rusty and chipped up as well. So is the arm socket. It's all nasty and busted up. Looks pretty cool. And you can see all the rust and everything here. And then you open that one up. And this hand does not want to stay, so I might have to apply a tiny bit of glue to it. And this one being that it's more closed, it's just dirty, but a little bit of surface rust and stuff like that along the way. And just real quick, come here. I don't want to lose it. Trying to get it out of there. So you can see, it's going to stay just within the focused area. So a little bit less rust, just kind of light surface rust and more chipping there for that. And I'm going to turn him over so you can see the underside. And what I did, I took a little flickering LED candle and took it all apart and bought a new battery because the old one was dead. Of course, CR2032 right there, that's the switch. and it's all glued in place. You're wondering why it's not falling out. The switch is glued, the battery's glued, and the connectors are glued. And you can see here the LED just flickering away. Now something I'll do here, maybe that'll help. Nope, that didn't help at all. So let me turn this up, turn off this light, because it is a dim little light, but you can see it kind of flickering away. It's just to represent he's just barely got any kind of energy left in there. Or maybe the connection's getting worse. It's either it's too bright in here or the connection to the battery is not good. That is one problem I did have the other day. I did mess up that. I actually came in here to take pictures of him on my little glass top and screwed things up. Let me crank up my brightness again here. Alright. So once again, you got the hand. And just for comparison's sake, let me zoom out just slightly here. And bring in, I said zoom out, all of it, just move it. So there's you a standard Haro to compare him to, so you can see just how dinged up he really is. And of course, like, you got to be right about there for the actual focus. Now, real quick, I'll break down pretty much what all I did. Okay, so this is going to be a very unorthodox review. It's also going to be kind of a walkthrough of how I made this thing. I took pictures along the way to kind of make it a little bit easier to describe. I didn't want to do a video log because that's a pain in the butt, and I was going about as fast as I could to get this done in a single day. So I started out with a plain white Haro, as you can see here on the screen, and I drew on with a pencil the kind of cutout that I wanted to see. And I wanted it to be over the door, or the flap, and around the eye, and then I wanted more damage down below. And so I used my Dremel tool, using just the cutoff wheel, and then later on a drill bit, and once I busted out the drill bit for something else, to cut out the edges, even to some degree, basically chipping it away with the cutoff wheel, and just kind of getting rid of it, and then even kind of along to give it a much more rougher edge, and then even digging in a little bit, as you can see here, in between, where I wanted a little bit more of a deeper scratch running between the cracks, and then a little bit more chipped off actual damage around the eye area. And then I even did the same thing for the inner cup for the arm. So did the same thing, kind of roughly drew on what I wanted to do, and then chopped it off with the thing. And I did at one point test fit the body to the chassis, so to speak, so that it would, you know, I could see where everything needed to be, even chipped away a little bit more of the eye. And then from there, even though I didn't actually take a picture of that particular stage, I went ahead and primed the whole thing with a normal primer. I roughly assembled it using sticky tack so that I'd have all my panels on there, so it all get primed all at once to be an even coat, which is a nice way to do that, especially when you're trying to keep things consistent and even. So coated the whole thing, took it all apart, coated the inside as well so it would match, and then I put down a base coat of Tamiya Silverleaf, or as much Silverleaf as I had, because I ran out after I did the top coat, and then when I went to do the inside edges and stuff like that, I ran out and had to use a little bit of Tamiya gloss aluminum, which is similar enough, but because it was just a base coat and not all of it was going to be seen, didn't really care. And then I took some of the Tamiya NATO brown and red brown that I bought just for this purpose, honestly, and did a few rust spots, some heavier areas along the top, along the back, and some spots around the bottom, and just kind of using a technique between fogging to get some bit of a spread, a really concentrated spray, holding it at an angle, and then just sort of hitting it exactly where I wanted to, and then even just kind of barely pushing it to get some, like, just spurts of the other color. Laid that down on top of silver, like you can see here. And from there, I decided to add the heavier rust the heavier rusty areas, especially where the kind of cracks and damage between the two broken areas were, and when I dug that area out. So I did a combination of things here, and one worked, one didn't. Normally I would use a little bit of super glue and then sprinkle the stuff there, or end up laying the thing in the actual powder. We'll cover more of that technique in a video I did with Thomas Rice. I'm just putting this one out first because it's quicker to edit. And so I took some clear coat, sprayed it into a cup like a paint, and then trickled it where I wanted it, and then layered on the different colors of the Tamiya weathering dust. Just scraped off some excess, ran it in there. Didn't quite work exactly how I wanted, because it's so slow to dry. Didn't really work. By the way, I'm using a hair dryer in between all of these coats. Once I had all of my rust layer, my base rust layer on there, even actually tabbing in a few more extra areas of different rust color, I hit the whole base with some clear coat, with some Tamiya premium semi-gloss. So I wanted to keep some of that metal shininess, which is always a good thing to have. You didn't want it to completely be flat. Then I have no flat. So after I did that, I ran through it, trying to determine where the rust and damage and stuff would be. So I had the main areas I wanted to leave exposed, but I wanted to figure out how I wanted to chip it. I wanted it to be where it had been sitting on this pedestal for quite some time. Rain had been falling on it forever. So I wanted a big exposed area near the top where the paint had just gone away over time, and then where the rust had been running down and maybe wind blown or chipped, stuff like that. So I laid out roughly where I wanted to go, and using a combination of toothpaste and salt. So toothpaste as a main masking layer to cover the bigger areas, and then sprinkling a mixture of incredibly fine salt and just regular table salt that's mixed together. Just sprinkle it around the edges and in random places all over. And then from there I applied the primer coat. So I took gunship gray, what I had left of gunship gray. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. I thought I used some German gray. I didn't. I had a whole other can of gunship gray I bought for a separate project. So I used the gunship gray, did the primer coat underneath everything. And then from there, now that I knew what areas were going to be left bare metal and bare rust, I just went back, added a little more toothpaste and a little more salt so that there would be exposed areas where the top coat had gone away, our top coat of paint had gone away, and now we're seeing the underlayers. So basically expanding. Now it wasn't a lot, it was just enough. And then using the salt to really get down through the regular paint to the next layer, stuff like that. So that's a good thing. I figured out the key to the salt chipping was not doing heavy layers of paint, and that's one problem I had before. Doing heavy layers of paint meant it just came off in one giant mask. It just went, it wasn't a thing. So after I did that, I hit it with the coral blue that I've been using for all of this kind of practice. I bought it for a single purpose. I've used it for that purpose, and I have a ton of that paint left. I still have that paint left, so I can still keep using it. So from there, I did some light misting, very light misting, get a good, just little coat, let it dry for a little bit, and then went over it again, just a slightly heavier coat, and then I let it sit. While I was waiting on the main body to be done, I took the hands, which are always the same color in the case of these Haros. I did the same process, but I wanted the exposed hand to be more damaged. So you can see here where I did the silver base coat on it, did a little bit of toothpaste, a little bit of chipping, and then a spritz of rust, and then did all the same thing, layering it up, and then eventually adding the top coat to both hands. Top coat of paint, I should say, not clear coat. Let me be honest there. Okay, so while all of the body was waiting, I needed to do the internals because I wanted it to have some detail. So I started off, just took the straight internal body part of the Haro kit, hit it all with just matte black, straight up Tamiya matte black, no biggie, right? And then from there, I rubbed on some Tamiya weathering silver, just to give it that worn metal look. Like, just did the whole surface, got the edges really strong, stuff like that. It was at this point I realized I wanted to give it the more robotic eye. So I came in here to the SHOKY cave and I dug through my spare bit trying to find a clear piece of red that I could use for that purpose. I was looking for any leftover parts from other runners and stuff like that. I found the perfect little bits. I don't know exactly what they were from, but there was clear red, it was round on the end, and it was just the end cap of a runner. It was perfect. So I found the matching drill bit, I cut off the eye, drilled in the hole, just pushed it straight in. Perfect, exactly where I wanted it to be. And then I also drilled a small hole down near the side, and then added in some tiny red and black wire. I don't recall where I got this wire from. I know it was a wire I was going to use to rig the LED in the Moon Gundam. So I had this wire already ready to go. So it's super glued in one end, run into a tiny hole in the other, and then super glued from the inside. I did have some spillage that affected things later, but overall it looks fine. Just wanted to have some extra wiring in there, something to make it look a little bit more mechanical. So from there I wanted to add more details. So I busted out my new Mr. Color copper paint, which is amazing. I've used Tamiya copper before and it's very thick, there's bigger particles, and it's harder to apply without it being caked on. This one on super easy, super thin, and as you can see here, looked really awesome, just lightly brushed on for some copper effects. Then I went ahead and added some Tamiya flat red, some Tamiya flat yellow, a tiny bit of eye green, just picking out little tiny details, like lights or buttons on the front or whatever, and I liked it. Now from there I did add some more Tamiya weathering powder to really dirty it up, because this area has been exposed, and just throw it on there. And then I clear coated it, you know, hit it with the same semi-gloss. And I forgot to mention this at one point, I did do the cups for the arms and legs. I couldn't figure out what color to do it, so I went with white. So I figured white's a good offset for that. I had some matte white left over. Did a base coat of silver on all of them. I did a rust coat under the one that's really broken and the one that's minorly broken, except that one I was looking at upside down, so I did all the rusting and stuff to the side you can't see. So underneath the foot and stuff is way rustier. You can see it all right here. And then I did salt chipping, all that stuff again, and then even the silver underneath exposed just enough, brushed it all away, and then did some more weathering. So at this point I'm working on the LED. I take the candle apart, you see how it kind of comes apart here, just pried the thing apart and it popped out, and you got the LED, you've got the battery, you've got the switch, it's all sort of kept together all at the base. I cut the base of it apart, leaving just the battery holster together, and checked it all out. I went and bought a soldering iron because I needed one. I've needed one for a while. I soldered in some more of the red and black wire like we showed earlier, and actually tried to extend the bulb way out so it's not just sitting right there. That worked out really well, except now I figured out that the base where the battery would not fit underneath the Haro base. I thought it would, it was too thick, so I had to take it all apart. But that happened, that kind of, you saw the end result of that already. But I tried dipping the bulb in clear red paint to give it a red tint. Didn't necessarily work. It's an orange LED to begin with. So down the line I may replace it with a real like red LED, make my life easier. But as it stands, for a light I already had, and I did want the flickering effect, it works. Now wiring in another LED, it's still gonna flicker. The flickering is actually in the little switch module, so there's that. I did have a problem, like I said before. I brought it in here to take pictures, and I set it down too hard, and the LED wouldn't work anymore. So I had to figure out what happened there. I took it all apart yesterday, completely rewired it, thinking that one of my connections had broke. That was a pain in the butt because some of the areas were super tiny and harder to work around. I eventually got it all rewired, still wouldn't work. So I pulled the battery off, which by the way was glued down, Turns out that it had just gotten a little too, just a barely bad connection on the positive side. So I scraped all the glue that apparently was there, scraped all that off, scraped it all off the negative terminal, found the position in which the battery would function perfectly, and then glued it in place, held it in place until it wouldn't move anymore, and the LED has worked ever since. Now, once again, in lights like this, it's not super bright, but it does work. Now, in the future, if I ever have to change the batteries, so you can still see it. You can still see it flickering. If I ever need to change the battery out, I can totally just pop it off. It is just, like I said, just glued down. Whoop-de-doo. It's just super glue. Okay, so from here, I just grab the now dry paint from the external body, take it to the sink, and just go to town washing it off and using a toothbrush to brush away all the salt, all the toothpaste, all the stuff. I kind of wish I had a slightly stiffer brush to really get some of that salt out, but you know, it is what it is. So here's one fun part about this. The little tiny cap, the little itty bitty plug that goes right on top of the head of the Haro, fell off in the sink. I didn't realize it. And one of the side panels had fallen off down the drain. I knew I should have plugged it ahead of time. So I actually had to reach in. Thank God, of course, we have a disposal. So I reach in. By all means, guys, be super careful if you ever need to do this. If you ever got to retrieve things from a disposal, go under the sink, unplug it from the wall, and, you know, just... Now, I had to fish around. Be careful you don't cut yourself. Usually they're not super sharp. Either way, I fished out both pieces, which was not easy to find. Super tiny plastic things that were in there. But I found them. I'm glad I did, because I didn't want to have to try to go through all that again. Unfortunately, at this point, I figured out I had done them upside down on the wrong sides. So the patterns that I'd cut through them aren't even anymore, but it's fine. The end result is still nice. But ultimately, see, even if I leave that hand out, he looks fine because of the pattern. But ultimately, I'm very happy with this. This came out exceptionally well. I am feeling very dumb that I screwed this part up. Like I said, I weathered the crap out of that on the wrong side. I always forget which way they're supposed to face. But oh, and then eventually, once I had them all together, I did add a lot more weathering right in here and right down here, and then even running some new drips, some new things. And something I did do, I had a very tiny bit of flat left. So the whole thing was already hit with semi-gloss to give it a little bit of shine. I sprayed some flat directly on the top, so it's not quite as shiny there as it is down here. So it's just a little bit of spectral highlighting. But yeah, just basically using Tamiya weather powder, a little bit of brown paint, just to get the effect. Now, something that I don't know if I'm going to be able to see on camera. Maybe I'll turn it the other way. Hold on. Okay, so once again, you can see some kind of crud. Let me zoom in. All along there. So I had the idea that it's been sitting there long enough that rain has accumulated and formed a bit of a ring where he's been sitting. So that was done with just a little cup of water and the Tamiya rust spilled out into it, basically. To basically film liquid rust. Now, if I were to hit it again with some clear coat, it'd probably stay. I did clear coat the whole thing again before I was completely finished as one piece, so that any extra weathering I did a few more rusty drips and stuff along here, following the path of that damage along there. And oh, I did dry brush a lot of this damage along this edge and inside there. I forgot about that. So yeah, ultimately it was a really fun one-day project. If I hadn't had it planned out decently, ahead of time, it probably would have taken a little bit longer. I knew what I was doing, and with all the practice I've been getting with trying to do these bases and stuff like that, and then even the other day when Thomas Rice was here playing around with the salt and stuff like that, it definitely worked out a lot better than originally I thought it would, because I wasn't having success, and this worked out really well. Having a rust colored paint made it a lot easier. I didn't have to cake on a ton of stuff. So this is where I wish I had a tiny little turntable. But yeah, this was a fun project, guys. And if you ever want to know how to do this, the tutorial where I teach Thomas Rice to basically do these things will be up shortly. And I'll link to that either in that card or down below or in the end screen, either way. So this wasn't a normal review. This is more of a Shoky custom show-off thing. By the way, I still have the extra hand here. I'm going to do with that now. Maybe I need to mess up one arm so he's like hanging out the side there. Or maybe this arm. Maybe I have this arm hanging out post damage. I don't know. Actually, that one's kind of glued in place. I don't know if that'll pop out. But either way, guys, of course, hit that big old like button if you like this nice little dirty Haro guy. And, of course, hit that subscribe-ish button. We are nearly to 4,500. Just crossed over 4,400 not long ago. And, yeah. Of course, if you want to get any of the Shoky shirts, like the one I was wearing, the Shut Up Coffee Machine shirt, by all means, do that. Everything does go to help the channel. And, of course, I need all the help I can get. Well, catch you guys on the next review. And remember, as always, Haro, 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 Haro. Bye, guys.